gets out of a tackle, now turns on the Jets, up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5, Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
28-yard play, Jetsu, body, up the middle, making another move to the outside, 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it, nice move by Brown, he's got space, he's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown, a record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
On third down so far, a little bit of a high snap. Genty right up the middle. Genty has room. Ashton Genty, give him 6.
Second and long, Lagar tries to beat it in a row. It does! Royals stays up. The show's off his 4-3 Wheels. Incredible effort for Royals.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to episode 32 of the G5 Hive, where we aim to bring you all the honey in G5 college football. I am your host, Justice, and I'm joined by my co-host, Luke. How you doing tonight, Luke?
Pretty good. A little bit later start. We got, the Hawkeye victory for the women, going over those bad girls at LSU, going all the way to the Final Four. So excited about that, and just fighting this cold. So this is my first full year as a parent with 2 kids in the school district, and I just feel like I'm getting sick all the time, and it's great. So I'm just battling through. I wouldn't call it like an MJ flu game. It's not like that. Look, Saturday it would have been pretty remarkable, but. Yeah, it has been an Easter to forget for the Probasco household. How are you doing, Justice?
I'm doing great, man. It was 80 degrees today. I went and played golf. A little tired from that, but it's always a great day when you go play golf.
Yeah, it was nice and rainy here, and I don't know, it was probably 40 degrees. And it was like windy and rainy, so like the rain gets on you, windy, probably feels like 30. No bueno.
We dropped a new episode of the Worker Bee series last week with Air Force. So we've had 3 episodes released so far. Hawaii Liberty Air Force. We have another episode coming for you this Friday. And then it'll be, I guess, 2 Fridays before our next episode. We do not have one for the 12th. But we'll have one on the 15th of that week.
Yes. Yep.
We have so many, we'll be dropping multiple ones throughout the week. 2 and 3, kind of as we get them. And with that being said, at least for the regular Monday night show, the live show that you're watching right now or listening to right now, or perhaps Tuesday or whenever, that's going to be put on hold, just because we're going to be so busy trying to record episodes for the Worker Bee series. We just really not going to have time to be able to squeeze in the live show as well. So it's going to be put on hold for a little while, but that doesn't mean there's going to be any less content. It just means you'll be getting content in a different way, at least for the next few weeks anyway. So there will be a show, a regular G5 Hive show next Monday, but it will not be a live show. It'll be Luke and I are interviewing a couple of players tomorrow, and we'll release that next Monday. And then moving after that, it'll just be more episodes of the Worker Bee series that will be released in lieu of us having the live show. But we'll keep you updated on Twitter. So just make sure you're subscribed to our Twitter account, and we'll let you know when the live show is going to come back. But it could be a while.
Yeah, I mean we at this point we're closing in on our quest to get all the teams here in the G5, and we're only missing like 9 or 10. And let me tell you guys, we're like pulling out all the stops. Like, it's almost like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like, did you touch this, school in some fashion that would know somebody? You guys are conference opponents. Do you know somebody, that's over here? Just anything and everything to get. And the other part is like vetting them and making sure they're, really knowledgeable. That's the other part of it, because we're not going to sacrifice quality just for content. So
Yeah, if anybody listening is a Mac fan, and you have some context in the Mac, please let us know. They are by far the toughest conference to try to find folks. And I mean that's probably half the schools, right? Where we're kind of missing folks from the Mac. So yeah,
sure.
if you have any contacts in the Mac, please reach out to Luke or I. Chances are we've probably already tried to get a hold of them, but maybe not. So yeah, let us know and see if we can get some of those Mac teams figured out.
But I will say though, like, it would be great to get all the teams, but how many we've got at this point, which I think is like 50 or 51, pretty darn impressive for year one, and I just envision it'll be something that grows here on out.
Yeah, I mean, if we have 50 interviews and we release 3 a week, it's going to be quite some time before we come back for a live show. But we will. We're not going anywhere. Just want to make folks aware that the live show will kind of be put on hold for a little while we work on these interviews. Got a couple comments here. What's up, Brett? Man, we thank you for your support. As always, you always like and comment on our videos, and we definitely appreciate that. We appreciate your support and everyone's support. If you're folks that are listening, if you're listening on YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on Twitter, we would love for you to follow us on Twitter, as well as retweet this video. So thanks, and thanks everyone for their support. Interesting story. I'll let Luke go into the details, but Luke asked me a question about you yesterday, Brett. He needed a little pick me up.
Yeah, I need a little pick me up. I had heard, Brett, that you had reached out to Justice and mentioned that we helped you with a couple waiver wire pickups during your fantasy football season. And I needed a little pick me up, and I needed to know who those people were. So I asked him if he knew who they were, and then Justice told me the players, and solid pickups. And I'm glad that we could help you in your fantasy season. And hopefully you're not the only person that we are helping.
Absolutely. Speaking of helping for fantasy, news and notes. There's a lot. Spring practice is in full swing here, and there's a lot of news and notes that I want to share with you guys. Before we get to the individual player news and notes, a little bit of coaching news. Matt Lubbock was officially announced as the Nevada offensive coordinator. Lubbock was previously the offensive coordinator at Nebraska 2020-2021. Those were Adrian Martinez years. When I went back and looked to try to figure it out, okay, well, what kind of offense does he have? Adrian Martinez kind of was the big piece from a production standpoint in those years in Nebraska. Then he was the Washington Huskies offensive coordinator 2017 and 2018. And those were the 2 years of Myles Gaskin. I want to say he had like 1,300, 1,400 yards both years. So the running game was big. And then in 2016, he was the Oregon offensive coordinator. And once again, it was the running game that kind of shined with Royce Freeman and Tony Brooks-James. More recently, he's spent the past 2 seasons as a senior analyst at Kansas in 22 and in 23. And Kansas is kind of known for their running game there with Devin Neal and and Daniel Hishaw. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, it's definitely the running game is kind of where you want to look potentially for Nevada. Getting into some player news, Kurt Kinney, the beat reporter for the San Diego Union Tribune, read an article recently that he wrote, and first kind of talked about the quarterbacks. He said the pecking order currently was A.J. Duffy, Danny O'Neill, Kyle Crum, and then Javance Tupuola Johnson. He said, talked to head coach Sean Lewis. Sean Lewis was quoted saying, "Those guys are pretty tightly bunched still as we go through it. All of them have been having a really good job." But in another breath, Lewis said, "You can tell those guys are still thinking and processing and orchestrating everything as we go. They're all still kind of all jumbled up, and no one has really pulled away from the pack one way or the other." Moving on to running back, Keenan Kriston is kind of the one running with the first team. Receivers, a little bit of a change up here from the last time we talked about who was running with the first team for San Diego State. And it's Jashawn Polk, Lewis Brown IV, and Nate Bennett. And then the first team tight end was Jude Wolf. Should be noted that Michael Harrison, the transfer over from Colorado, the big wide receiver / tight end, he is not in spring camp. He won't be back there until the summer. So that obviously could shake things up for sure. Evan Dudley, beat reporter for AL.com, speaking about the running backs, and he talks about Lee Beebe leading the thin running back room this spring. He says he has the physical skills to do everything we do at running backs. Running backs coach Henley Bingham said he has a background as a receiver, so he understands that phase of the game, but he's tough and can move laterally and accelerate on a dime. He took the momentum of how he finished the season and carried it into the offseason. UAB head coach Trent Dilfer said he had a dominant winter program. He's been tremendous. His attitude is awesome. I talk about bringing life to the group, bringing energy, and Lee is that guy that does it all the time. Should be noted that Isaiah Jacobs and Armani Goodwin are not practicing right now in the spring. They're both expected to be there for fall camp. But, it sounds like BB is going to have a role. And Evan Dudley went on to say that BB should have no worries retaining an impactful role in the rotation. So, Lee Beebe, someone to look at, but it does kind of sound like it's going to be, a mixture of Beebe, Isaiah Jacobs, and Armani Goodwin. But Jacobs and Goodwin just aren't there right now. But Beebe's certainly been impressing with the opportunity he's been given in the spring. Next up, Wyoming. Ryan Thorburn, a writer and for the director of communications and creative strategy for Wyoming Athletics. So, having said that, you need to understand he is an employee of the university, right? And so you kind of have to have that understanding when you read news coming directly from the school itself. But he's talking about they were talking about Harrison Whaley, and he talked to head coach Savell, and he said Harrison is in a great spot. Savell said of Whaley, who is currently competing at 204 pounds after running at 190 pounds during last season. Harrison is super happy with how he feels right now. He has had a great offseason. DJ Jones, the touted North Carolina transfer, is pushing the returnees this spring and expected to add to the offensive explosive elements when the season kicks off at Arizona State. So great news there for Harrison Whaley. Moving on to New Mexico, Sean Ryder, beat reporter from the Albuquerque Journal, talking about the quarterback room. He says relatively clear it's Devin Dampier at the front of that quarterback room. It's seen in the way he's used, heard in the tone. Coaches adapt to speak about him. He's dynamic. He's smart. He's capable. Bronco Mendenhall said He has natural leadership skills. He can make all the throws. I love his decision making. So much to work with in a positive way. We've been big fans of Devin Dampier on this podcast, and this is the kind of news you want to hear. Talking about the running back room at New Mexico, the perceived running back pecking order on day one. Andrew Henry got a lot of reps with the first team. Javen Jacobs with the second team. And Eli Sanders with the third. Something that I didn't know before I read this article, but Javen Jacobs and Devin Dampier were teammates in high school. So something to kind of file away. I wanted to talk about the O-line because we've talked about that numerous times on this podcast and concerns with Devin Dampier and the Bronco Mendenhall and the New Mexico offense as a whole. And that's kind of the big issue there is that offensive line because they lost all their starters, they lost several backups, so they're really kind of starting over there. But Sean Ryder writes the group. The O-line group seen the most during his viewing period was Baraka Beckett, Wallace Unoba, Jawan Singletary, Richard Pierce, and Tavian Ford. For those keeping track, that's 4 transfers. Beckett came from Campbell by the way of UCLA. Unamba came from Florida Atlantic, Singletary from Grambling State, and Pierce via East Carolina with one returner. And that's Ford, who started 10 games at right tackle in 2022. He switched over to defensive line in 2023, and now he's back over with the offensive lineman. So, as we've said in the past, that O-line's gonna, how New Mexico does, how Dampier does, it's all gonna be predicated on how well that O-line gels and how well they perform this coming season. Moving on to the receivers for New Mexico. Some receivers that were running with the first team, Caleb Medford, Luke Wysong, and Ryan Davis. Coach Mendenhall singled out Syracuse transfer Isaiah Jones and Nick Trujillo when he was asked about that wide receiver room. All right, moving on to Tulsa, Caden McFarland, sports director at KJRH. QB Cardell Williams was dressed out. He's wearing a new number this year, number 2, and looks like he's added some weight. But as we mentioned before, he's a limited participant in spring practice. Anthony Watkins is back after running for nearly 900 yards last season.
I told you, Justice. I knew he'd be back. I knew. You had questions because I drafted him in this mock draft.
I did. I wasn't 100% sure. Camden Benjamin's also back. I think people had questions about that as well. And then Caden McFarland noted that the run of the day was by freshman Veron Ellison, who cut back in traffic for about 20 yards. He is a Louisville native, and he has good size and talent. So a freshman running back to kind of file away for the future there from Tulsa. Moving on to Ohio, and Eric Decker, sports editor for the Athens Messenger, recently wrote a feature article on Ricky Hunt Jr. And he basically goes on to things we've kind of already know, but it's just kind of good to get this confirmation. But now with both rushers ahead of him, the year prior out of the program, the redshirt freshman returns as one of the expected key contributors in this next iteration of Bobcat football. For him, though, the mindset has never really changed. Coming into this year, there's no change in mindset. Still just fighting for the spot. Nothing is guaranteed right now. The 5'11" running back said in an interview with the Messenger after Tuesday's practice, that's Ricky Hunt. He said, just making sure I'm mentally prepared and spiritually prepared. So, just kind of confirmation that we all knew Ricky Hunt Jr. is kind of the man there for Ohio. And great to hear that he is still putting in the work that like he put in last season. Moving on to the Buffalo Bulls, and Rachel Lindsay beat reporter for the Buffalo News, wrote an article last Monday. They started spring practice on Tuesday, and she brought 5 players to watch out for. The first was CJ Agbana, quarterback, who split time with Cole Snyder during the second half of last season. He's more of a running threat. He'll be a senior this year. Cole Snyder's transferred out, and he'll be in the mix for that starting quarterback spot. Jaquez Barksdale, running back. He's the returning leading rusher from last season. 52 carries for 248 yards and 2 touchdowns. He emerged in the second half of last season, so someone to watch out for running back. I'm going to mention a couple of defensive players too, just because she mentioned them. Marcus Fuqua, safety, elder statesman of the secondary, returns for a 5th season with the Bulls, had 57 tackles and 12 pass breakups. She mentions Nick McMillan, someone who a lot of folks were high on last year. And she offered a reason for why his playing time last season wasn't what we expected. He had a shoulder separation that kind of messed up his playing time last season. But he returns. He's a redshirt sophomore this year. He's the leading receiver from a year ago, 13 catches for 180 yards and a touchdown. And then lastly, she mentions linebacker Red Murdoch, who as a redshirt freshman last year, his role grew after the injury to Sean Dolak. He finished, who's now off to Utah State. He finished with 60 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, and 4 forced fumbles. Moving on to the San Jose State Spartans. Jackson Moore of 24/7 talked about. He kind of did a wrap up of the first couple of weeks of spring practice. San Jose State is not practicing this week as they are on spring break. The quarterback competition is still very much up in the air. They have 6 quarterbacks in camp, and all 6 are still being rotated, still getting an even shot, equal reps, rotating with the first team. So they haven't narrowed down that quarterback competition at all yet. He does mention that running back Grambling State transfer Floyd Chalk IV is currently, he's the one kind of getting buzz in that running back room, but it is a fairly thin running back room, but he kind of looks like the guy taking the lead. Moving on to the wide receivers, Weber State transfer Trayshawn Hurry had the highlight play of the spring so far with an impressive catch over the safety on a deep ball, then ran it in for a touchdown. He says you haven't seen a lot of Justin Lockhart in spring practice, but enough of him to make it appear that he is definitely on track to be 100% by the fall. And he says the group of Nick Nash, Justin Lockhart, Malachi Miller, Trayshawn Hurry, and Matthew Coleman look impressive for that wide receiver room. And there's also opportunity for a couple more receivers to break in that rotation. Moving on to the tight ends, they're moving to the spread and shred offense. And, they haven't really used tight ends in the past. But he did say the staff has been talking about ways to incorporate Sam Olson and Skylar Loving Black into the spread and shred offense. So be interesting to see, if they can kind of work these tight ends in, because it just really hasn't been done so in the past. And the final bit of news for the G5 college football this week comes from East Carolina Pirates and Stephen Igo of 24/7 and Hoist the Colors. And he's talking about the first scrimmage that East Carolina had. And he says in the first few weeks of practice, one consistent theme through 2 weeks of practice is ECU can throw the ball with some serious talent this year, but the running game is still a work in progress. That's a little surprising to me because they have a pretty loaded running back room. So not really sure. Maybe it's an offensive line thing or what's really going on. And he didn't really go on to into detail about what's going on with the running game. But he says the biggest difference between this year's offense and scrimmages and last year is just the sheer talent and playmaking ability at quarterback and at wide receiver. The amount of accurate balls from transfer quarterbacks Katenhauser and Jake Garcia, and the ability to throw with anticipation and throw guys open is night and day difference from last year, which is no shocker. If you watched East Carolina last year, the passing game was, other than Chase Soul, there really wasn't anything to get excited for from a passing game perspective. Talking about the receivers, he says the most consistent presence of the at scrimmages is wide receiver Winston Wright Jr., transfer from Florida State. Said he made a few nifty grabs over the middle, and that both Omega Blake and Chase Soul both made acrobatic touchdown grabs on deep throws from Jake Garcia. There doesn't really appear to be a leader at this point at quarterback, so kind of stay tuned there. Luke, what do we have coming up for spring games this coming up week?
All right, Justice, I'll let you take a little break. 26 minutes into it, you probably did about 22 minutes of the talking there. But I appreciate it with my not feeling the best, so appreciate it. Spring practice dates and games. Spring games this coming weekend for April 6th. We've got Navy midshipmen. Their practice doesn't end until the 12th, but they are having the game during the middle, which is kind of odd. So we'll see maybe if we can figure out why they do it that way, but that is something interesting. We've got North Texas Mean Green, UNLV Rebels, the Toledo Rockets, Southern Miss Golden Eagles, and the UAB Blazers. That is it for the spring practice dates and games. Now let's finish off our G5 only mock drafts, rounds 11 through 15. Justice, do you want to again give a shout out to the people who joined this?
Absolutely. So Brett's watching and he's commenting live on YouTube. So Brett was one of the participants. Andrew Katz, Brock, CFF Jared, Clint Carlson, Steve Jackson, Rebel Way, Corey Cavender, PJ, and Dwight Peebles. Thanks to you guys for participating in this G5 only mock draft. And we will get started here with rounds 11 through 15.
All right, we've got Naheem Simmons, wide receiver, USF. Anthony Lampsphere, tight end, Memphis. Treon Sibley, wide receiver, Liberty. Rawson McNeil, wide receiver, Rice. Dante Lee, wide receiver, Liberty. Javon Jackson, running back, UTEP. LV Bunkley Shelton, which I've kind of forgot that he made that transfer, but he is wide receiver at Georgia Southern. Isaiah Jacobs, running back, UAB. McCade Hillstead, quarterback, Utah State. Casey Kane, UNLV, wide receiver. Christian Lewis, wide receiver at Troy. And Giovanni McCoy, quarterback at Oregon State. Thoughts here, Justice?
Man, as we talked last week, it felt like after round 10 it kind of really dropped off, and we're just kind of at this point we're just really throwing darts. Dante Lee, someone that John spoke highly of when we did our Worker Bee series with Liberty, definitely worth a dart throw at this point. Javon Jackson, following that staff from Austin Peay to UTEP, and UTEP losing Hankins and some others. I do like that pick. Jackson they get 1,200 yards last year. I think that was the only 1,000-yard receiver that staff's ever had, but it was him, right? And he's following them over to UTEP, so I like that pick. Obviously, the Isaiah Jacobs pick with the news we just talked about earlier doesn't look so hot right now. Christian Lewis, great pick if he can come back healthy. If you don't know, Christian Lewis was diagnosed with cancer, and he says he's going to be back, but he's currently undergoing treatment for that right now. So yeah, I mean, Sibley had a good year last year, but Reese Smith was hurt. And he's someone that John also spoke highly of when we talked about Liberty. I don't hate the Ross and McNeil pick. Um, we just don't know who's going to kind of step up into that Luke McCaffrey role for Rice. Certainly, as a freshman, Rawson had a good season there. Yeah, I mean, LV, you know, talented kid, I guess, right? At least he was. He was thought of highly, as a recruit, but he just hasn't really gotten it going wherever he's been. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get it going here in the G5. I think the big question is who's going to be the quarterback at Georgia Southern, and the offense could look very different than what we expect, right? Or what we've seen out of them in the past. Both J.C. French and is it Dexter Williams? Definitely more mobile options there, and they might not chuck it around as much as they have in recent years.
And the only thing, I mean, I like the tight end pickup of Lane Spear there at the top of the 11th. I think he kind of had a down year for what he could be Watson definitely took a lot of touchdowns off the board. I could see him bouncing back and having like 7 touchdowns or so. I don't remember how many he had last year, but the tight end for Memphis previous to that had 7 touchdowns 3 consecutive years. So I'm going to try to look up what he had here last year. But he had 3 touchdowns last year, so I could see a bounce back there. Kind of interesting news out of Utah State, and McKay Hillstead is running 3rd string right now.
Yeah, that's what we saw last week.
Which I thought was really interesting, because I feel like Utah State had a lot of, I don't know what the word I want to use, but they had a lot more energy when he came into the game. If he didn't start, if he started, then they didn't have the energy. It was just whenever they made that quarterback change, there was this jolt of energy, and whoever then is the incoming quarterback took over. But yeah, Petrus was the 2nd team. Yeah, and Hillstead was 3rd, which I thought was interesting for getting as many starts. Kind of not even getting the nod at the 2nd team was interesting. And then Isaiah Jacobs, just with a knee injury. I feel like it happened late. I don't have the exact date, but I feel like it did happen late, so it makes me nervous.
I don't think it was super late. I feel like it was more towards the middle of the year, but I could be wrong about that. Because Jermaine Brown kind of took off. I feel like it was game 5 or 6.
The last game he had stats for was September 30th, so my guess would be it happened then.
Yeah, so that would have been week 4 or 5.
Week 5.
Yeah,
week 5. So, yeah, I don't love that. Yeah, LV Bunkley Shelton was somebody I really liked when he was at
Arizona State,
Oklahoma.
Okay. He was at Arizona State first, right? And then he went to Oklahoma.
Was that okay? Yeah. Yep. So I liked him at Arizona State, and then going to Oklahoma, and then just hasn't found a place to. And then Simmons, a running back that'll get you 10 points. Might be able to get a touch. Oh, sorry, receiver get you 10 points. Sorry. Let's see here. That kind of wraps up round 11. Round 12, we've got Prince Strawn, Cade Conley. Okay, Prince Strawn, wide receiver, Boise. Cade Conley, tight end, Marshall. Eli Wilson, App State, tight end. Cooper Lagasse, apparently Brett decided to get all of the Utah State quarterbacks. Good idea because he's the starter right now. Quarterback at Utah State, AJ Duffy. Quarterback at San Diego State, Kai Thomas. Running back, Kent State. Jabrice Dunbar, running back, Boise State. Darrell Robinson, running back, UConn. Kyle Kelly, quarterback, Ball State. Caden Veltkamp, quarterback, tight end, we're not sure. We'll go with quarterback for right now at Western Kentucky. Devon Booth, running back, Utah State. And Noah Kim, quarterback, Coastal Carolina. Thoughts?
I don't think Kai Thomas is still there anymore. Off the top of my head. Yeah, I mean, blocking up the Utah State quarterbacks there, as you said, with Cooper Lagasse, who's currently running with the first team. Definitely, a solid strategy. I love the Breezy Dubar pick here by Jared. Darrell Robinson, someone I was really high on last year. And I really would like to know the story of why he left Charlotte, just because he had that high school relationship with Biff there. And I thought he was going to get fed the ball a lot. He got injured last season, so not really sure what happened there at Charlotte. But he moves on to UConn, so definitely interested to kind of see what he can do there. Veltkamp, great pick, because I'm not convinced that TJ Finley is necessarily the for sure starter there at Western Kentucky. Davon Booth, at this point, a nice pick for Corey, running back, Utah State, led them in rushing a year ago. The tight ends, Eli Wilson, not a bad tight end there for App State. AJ Duffy was totally an upside pick. It's encouraging to know he's kind of running with the ones, but as it sounds in the news, they none of the quarterbacks at San Diego State have really kind of separated themselves.
My three favorite picks this round are the upside pick there of AJ Duffy, and then the two Boise State picks, Breezy Dunbar and Prince Strawn, just because that offense should be so good. Prince did really well there at the end of the season, but then with the new quarterback coming in, offensive coordinator likes to run the ball. We'll see how well that goes, but he's definitely got the talent. He is younger brother of Michael Strawn, who was kind of an under the radar guy. I don't know if he got drafted. He might have got drafted in like the 6th or 7th round by Indianapolis, but I know he's at least seen the field a couple times. I don't know if he's rostered anymore. I don't think he is, but yeah, then the Darrell Robinson. I was just kind of like, hey, he did his 4 games, I think, and then he's like, I'm redshirted. And he was like the highest recruit that Charlotte's gotten. So he's kind of one of those names that I feel like is able to go play at maybe a lower end P4 school, but I don't know. We'll see what UConn does. I think he should do really well. If he doesn't, then he's obviously not the player that I think he is.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Kent State spring roster, and I'm not seeing Kai Thomas on it.
The last news in Fantrax was from August, and he wasn't on the roster then.
All right, moving on to round 13.
All right. Javon Tracy, wide receiver, Miami of Ohio. Maryland Johnson, wide receiver, Florida Atlantic. Kenyon Clay, running back, Southern Miss, Lexington. Let me see last name here. Joseph. Running back, Florida International. Grant Wilson, ODU quarterback. Alex, is it Bonham? Bowman, tight end, Tulane. Jay Butterfield, quarterback, San Jose State. Ron Wiggins, running back, Jacksonville State. Pat Navarro III, running back, Nevada. Totally forgot that he had transferred from Boston College there. Robert Henry, running back, UTSA. Chris Marshall, wide receiver, Boise. And Michael Allen, running back, UNLV. You've been going first here, so my first rundown of it is my favorite pick is probably Chris Marshall, because at this point you're throwing darts, and given his pedigree of the 5-star, he had his little mishap there at Texas A&M, does community college, comes back. That could be something dynamic there for the Broncos. Pat Navarro, like he was just a rushing fool. Like, I don't want to say, like, he's not like exact body type of AJ Dillon, but like it was just like give him the ball and watch him like get four yards every single time at Boston College. He's just got this big body that they just gave him the ball all the time, and I like that pick late. And then Jay Butterfield. If you're going to do a spread and shred offense, hopefully you can shred and throw for more than, I think they had like 219 yards passing per game last year. So I think that's a good late pickup. What are your thoughts?
My two favorite picks that I think to me stand out the most are Pat Garwo, running back for Nevada, and Ron Wiggins, Jacksonville State. I just feel like, those two running backs, kind of like I liked Devin Booth in the round before. Those two running backs are going to give you some good production, right? Ron Wiggins, you're probably looking at 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. That Jacksonville State does spread the ball around a lot in terms of running, but they also run the ball a lot. There's a lot of volume there for the running game, and Ron Wiggins, I think, is the guy that'll lead that running back group. Pat Garwo going down to Nevada and the Mountain West. Like we just said, the new OC is kind of known for his running game, so I like that pick even more now with that new OC hire. Those are probably the two I like the most. Javon Tracy, Kenyon Clay, those guys can certainly be in the mix. We've talked about it before. Southern Miss doesn't have a lot at running back other than Rodriguez, Clark, and Clay. So Clay can certainly kind of be that number 2 guy, I feel like. And then they have a freshman coming in too that should get some carries as well. Lexington Joseph, we talked about in the news before. I don't know, last week before, but coming back from injury. So being kind of interesting to see, where he asserts himself in that running back room. Jay Butterfield, like you said, definitely worth a shot. But I guess the devil's advocate side of me says, well, he comes from that P5 pedigree, comes from Oregon, and he hasn't separated himself yet through the first 2 weeks of practice. That's not a great sign either. But certainly, we want to know who the quarterback is at San Jose State. Chris Marshall, like you said, the talent's there. We just hope that that he has his all his issues worked out and can be a positive and productive member there at Boise State.
All right, let's move on to round 14. Jaden Cradle, running back, Middle Tennessee, Charlie Spegel, running back, Ball State, Kenyon Jenkins, quarterback, FIU, Jalen Gill, wide receiver, Fresno State, DT Sheffield, wide receiver, uh, North North
Texas.
Texas, uh, Devin Voisin, wide receiver, South Alabama, which is huge. I think we all forgot that he was coming back and had eligibility, I think. Dean Patterson, wide receiver, FIU. Isaiah Page, wide receiver, ODU. Bryson Barnes, quarterback, Utah State. DJ England. I'm trying. Chisholm, wide receiver, Middle Tennessee. Malik Hornsby, quarterback, Arkansas State.
Wide receiver
then,
now,
and
supposedly.
then Rocky Beers, tight end, FIU. Obviously, I think the best pick is probably the Voisin. Just based off of history. I personally am not a huge proponent of grabbing somebody wide receiver wise that's coming off of like a knee injury. I just think that typically it takes 2 years to get back to normal. So we'll see how, because I don't think he's a full go yet. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, we'll just see if DT Sheffield can make some noise at North Texas. I would like to think he can, but I'm not sure what happened there at Washington State last year. Had that like amazing. Everybody was talking about the spring game that he had, and boy, is he fast. But then, like, he was just gone. I think.
Yeah,
I don't know
early in the season he said he quit the team and said he's going to the portal. So
yeah, it was just a weird circumstances. So I don't know. Jalen Gill, I think great pick this late. What are your thoughts?
My favorite three. Well, I don't think Gill's not there anymore. So it almost makes me think, was that a placeholder and I missed it going through the chat. But I don't really remember. I like those three receivers: DT Sheffield, Devin Vosen, and Dean Patterson. Those are probably the three picks I like the most. We talked about it last week with FIU. Their wide receiver one, from Tyrese Chambers to Chris Mitchell last year. Their wide receiver one produces, and Dean Patterson certainly got a great shot to step into that role. So I like that pick here. I think you kind of really covered Vosen really well. Sheffield, someone has to step in and to kind of take that Jamori Macklin role. He's moved on. And this is probably I want to say at this point in the draft, this is the third North Texas receiver that got drafted. I want to say Landon Sides and Damon Ward were drafted before Sheffield here. So one of them you got to believe is probably the guy to kind of step into that Jamori Macklin role. Isaiah Page, he is, if in a PPR league, he's the guy that gets 7 receptions for 40 yards in that ODU offense. He is the slot receiver. He's kind of operates as an outlet. They throw a lot of bubble screens to him. So don't hate that pick. Keon Jenkins, maybe he can kind of take that next step. I think folks were really excited for him early on in the season, and then things kind of cooled off. But he was young guy last year. Hopefully, we can see some growth there, and so I like that pick as well.
I'm just trying to look up Jalen Gill. Did he just run out of eligibility?
Yeah, he's out of eligibility. He's out of
just came.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, he went to the draft.
But I almost wonder if that wasn't a placeholder for somebody, and I just missed it when I was going through going through the list.
Okay. I don't know why I thought he had eligibility left because he's, like I
No,
said, going to
because
the
it was
draft by way of Ohio State, by way of Boston College, by way of Fresno State.
yeah, because the guys running with the ones were Magdalena, Jalen Moss, and Josiah Freeman, and then Emory Edwards was kind of rotating with Freeman and Delena. Last we heard on Fresno State.
So my fault there on Jalen Gill. My fault. All right, last round, round 15. We've got Reese Clark, tight end Temple. You're gonna probably have to Quavez. Is it
Humphrey,
Humphrey? Wide receiver Sam Houston State. Brennan Wooten, tight end Western Michigan. Sam Olson, tight end San Jose State. Anthony Watkins, running back Tulsa. Alex Perry, wide receiver Hawaii. Dylan Goffney, wide receiver Colorado State. Trey Goodman, wide receiver UTEP. John Michael Goodman? No. John Michael
Gillenborg.
Gillenborg. Okay. Uh, tight end Wyoming. Jaquez Cross, running back Arkansas State. Mitch Griffiths, quarterback Marshall. And then what's here? Where am I? I have lost.
Zevi Eckhoff, quarterback Washington State.
Sorry, I'm not using the slides. I'm in the actual draft. And I just lost my spot, even though it was the last pick. I should have been able to get there. But yeah, that was a rough ending to me narrating us through that. Sorry about that. Me going through this, they're all upside picks. It's a lot of tight ends because everyone needed to get a tight end. Alex Perry, a name mentioned in the Worker Bee series as a upside guy. Anthony Watkins, I just know Tulsa really likes him as a running back. So I needed more running back depth, so I took him there. Dylan Goffney, people want him, especially Andrew Katz wants him to be the guy there at Colorado State so bad.
He had some games last year, but it's still got Justice Ross Simmons, Torrey Horton still there, crowded room.
Yep, and then Mitch Griffiths, I think, is a really good upside pick, depending on what that offense looks like, because there's a lot of questions about what that offense will actually look like.
The my favorite pick is the pick of this round is your pick, Luke. Anthony Watkins, man. Like I don't know, for some reason I thought he was out of eligibility, but at this point, why we even question eligibility anymore? We just don't know, right? I'll be so glad when the COVID year kind of is gone and it's a lot easier cut and dry in terms of who still has eligibility. That Anthony Watkins is easily my favorite pick in this round. Again, probably not going to get you 1,000 yards, but I could see 800 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns in round 15. That's a steal. I like Brett's pick of John Michael Gillenborg at Wyoming. Wyoming uses the tight end. Trayton Welch is gone, so maybe that means more reps there for John Michael at Wyoming. And then Trey Goodman, someone at UTEP's going to have to catch the ball. He follows the staff over from Austin P. Felt like taking a shot on him. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That wraps up our first G5 only way too early mock draft, I think. I don't know if we'll try to do another one maybe closer to the season. Just kind of see
or maybe we'll actually do an actual draft and have a redraft league. Do a league for G5 as we get closer to the season. We can talk about it then.
Okay. But yeah, it was deep. It was deep. And
Yeah, I mean, it got rough. Like we said, it got rough after round 10. I felt like, but hell,
like,
you got Anthony Watkins here in round 15. Anthony Watkins, we do this again. I'm sure he's going much higher than round 15.
well, it's like when I got to him, I was looking for everything because I knew he'd been there for a while. But then like he has like he just had a year off that he didn't do anything. Then he had a year for a medical red shirt. And then he had a red shirt. So it's like I think he's technically in year 2, even though he's been in school for like 4 or 5 years, and with the
Yeah.
COVID year and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna try. I think it might be this. I'm not sure. So, and then a lot of the schools don't have their 2024 rosters up yet, which also, makes it hard. So I know there's a couple times in this draft where we had to repick things because somebody was out of eligibility and this and that. So that made it a little bit extra difficult. And as you can see, even in my last round of Gil, I was like, I thought he was still had another year of eligibility. So egg on my face.
Brett commented that he had a brain fart at that point, that he thought he was drafting Jalen Moss, even though at that point Jalen Moss was long gone. But he had kind of thought that's what was going on. So yeah.
But yeah, that does it for us tonight. Again, we've got another Worker Bee series coming out on was it Friday the 5th?
Friday the 5th, 8 a.m.
So, and then we'll have no more live shows for a little bit while we do our interview series, our Worker Bee series. We will be doing a player interview tomorrow. That then will drop. So it'll be a recording that drops next Monday for your viewing and listening pleasure, either late Monday or Tuesday, however you consume this.
Again, thank everyone for the support. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on Twitter, please follow us. Please retweet the video. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star reviews. We definitely appreciate it.
Good night. Go Hawks.
Hawk,